main purpose of today is to present the main findings or results so far, what we've done in this particular project. I'll give you a brief summary of why we got to start this project in the first place. The group that I'm leading on monitoring chronic conditions is mainly focused on trying to understand how long-term conditions impact on people's health. We know that some of these conditions are particularly important in the global burden of disease. Cardiovascular disease happens to be the second highest condition in terms of the global burden of disease, which makes it crucially important to understand that not only individuals that have these high risks, but how we manage these individuals. The meeting that we held had two purposes. The first one was about dissemination, and for that we wanted to attract opinion leaders in the field and also the best researchers, particularly in the UK, but also internationally. So we had people there that had sort of the largest collaboration of Lipid members, the ones that established it. We had people from NICE guidelines. We had individuals that have been leaders in the research projects within the clinical practice research database. And we also had our collaborators in the different areas of the world. So it was a very good mix of individuals. The other reason was we obtained very good comments from them and ideas of how to develop our research further in order to obtain and create different analysis that will eventually feed into our final report.
We've been using data from the Clinical Practice Research Data Link, which is a large computerized database collected in general practice in the UK. We fitted models that allowed for the variation in cholesterol measurements over time. And we found that on average in the whole population, the lipid levels were pretty constant over time, but there was a wide variation around this constant rate of change. So patients had a rate of change that varied from a decrease in lipid levels all the way through to an increase in lipid levels. The average rate of change over time was very small. Even after 5 years, the signal that you're getting was only just overcoming the noise. So if you monitor too frequently, you're more likely to pick up this random variation than you are a true change.
The study showed on one level exactly what we expected, which was that if you monitor too often, then you treat too many people. But on another level, it suggested that that doesn't matter because the treatment is cheap and appears to be very benign and beneficial. One suggestion raised at the meeting was that you could take that argument to its natural extreme and conclude that you shouldn't measure to see who needs treatment, you should just give everybody treatment.
There were quite a few arguments against treating everyone raised during the meeting, which were very interesting and important. One was that although we believe that the safety profile of statins is very good, there's still some uncertainty around that. And there were some questions about potential important side effects that might occur in a minority of individuals, but still be highly relevant and should be taken into consideration. The other side, also related to treating everyone, was that people might not necessarily want to take a pill forever, and that a considerable amount of individuals either will not comply or will comply only for a period of time. If the second thing occurs, then you might want to identify when to target them, so when they're most vulnerable, and that will be obviously when their risk is particularly high.
It's been particularly useful for me because I was a member of the original NICE guideline on lipid modification. So we established the recommendations that are currently national clinical policy, and this meeting in particular is looking at one of the areas where we didn't have any real data to help inform some of the recommendations we made, so I think it's invaluable.
We've got to think, in clinical practice, think of your average general practice, there's a problem. There's so much activity going on, we have to justify what it means. Is it beneficial, or is it adding no value, then why are we doing it? What this is saying today is potentially you could remove a number of unnecessary tests and use that time in a different way.
I think one of the take-homes that our group had was that we have some very large cohort data with a lot of low-risk patients, what was interesting was that maybe it's okay to take out those low-risk patients. They're perhaps less interesting, and maybe the more interesting questions are really among the medium-risk group people, and that's where we should probably be focusing a lot of our analyses.
Personally, I think that people of particularly high risk should get some personalised treatment strategies available to them, and that is going to require probably regular monitoring to ensure you've got the right treatment at the right dose to the right individual. At a population level, I think those of more moderate risk, I think probably we should be exploring more population level interventions, and that, I suspect, would warrant lower levels of monitoring than perhaps we do currently. And I think the way that that makes this work relevant is because if we are monitoring people, we want that test to be reliable.
One crucial element of the meeting that we had was that it was not at the end when all the results were finished in a way. It helped, therefore, for all the participants during the meeting to be involved in the research as it is still live and have a say as to what the final recommendations and findings are going to look like. With that information that we obtained from the meeting, we're in a situation where we can generate much better information and a much better report that we'll be delivering it to the HTA. One thing that this project hasn't been able to look at or try to answer is the cost, the human cost of this, whether patients actually like to go and see the doctors and what extra added benefits they might have from actually visiting the GPs at a particular time. Having said that, we have a large program of work that is exactly looking at that particular area.
It is important because what it'll help to define is the best ways that we can, having identified people at risk, follow them up, and also helps us to define what the best treatment strategies are. And all of these things are important because we can't treat without some costs, and therefore we need to be as clear about cost-effective diagnostics as we are about cost-effective prescribing.
For our group, it was very, very useful because you tend to work in isolation. You tend to be very focused on a particular project and be able to talk openly of what you've done, be able to show what you've achieved and get feedback from it. In this case, in fact, was very positive feedback, was an invaluable thing for our group.